So I am going to now hop into Capture One, and we should be there now running, and we should actually see my Capture One screen. If I can just give somebody, have somebody give me a thumbs up. Let me make sure that we're all showing everything here and that everything is up and running. Okay, perfect. I got the thumbs up, which means that we are good to go. So what we're looking at now is sort of the Capture One 20 as it launches and as things sort of come together. This may look a little bit interesting if you've never worked with a raw processing suite before, or if you've never worked with Capture One before. And it can certainly be a little bit intimidating at first. But I can certainly say that one of the neat pieces that we've got as a part of Capture One is we have the ability to customize our windows and make things changing. I'm going to go ahead for just a bit of a piece here, and I'm going to actually switch to what we call our migration workflow. Those of you who currently are using other pieces of software, this may look a little bit more familiar and a little bit better for you to bring things together. You know, these of course are just one of the combinations and one of the customizations that we can certainly do. But I'm going to actually go back to the default just because that's what I've been using for the last several years here, which is one of the things that you know, makes things a little bit easy for me. Starting sort of on the left-hand side of the screen, we have a couple of tools that you may recognize. Import, export, those of course make a little bit of sense to get your images into the program. Capture One has the ability to run in one of two modes. We have a session or a catalog workflow, and each one works a little bit different. But the biggest thing to kind of do is as we're kind of going along, ask me some questions. We can discuss that. Catalogs versus sessions is an entire other hour-long conversation that I don't want to bore anybody with today, but we can certainly point you in some information. I've got my group today set up in a session-based workflow just because it's a little bit easier for what we're doing today. I've gone ahead and I've imported some images over to the right-hand side of my screen here. You can kind of see as I'm scrolling through those. The first couple of images today, and we'll go through them, are from a good friend of mine, Scott Niedermeyer, who was happily able to provide me with a couple of images from a trip to Ireland that he went through. So, of course, enough sort of about organization. Let's actually go through and let's talk technology and let's see what we can do in this case. So, we'll go in here and we're going to start with our capture window. The capture window, in this case for our particular use, isn't really going to be working all of that well because it's actually designed for a tethered based workflow, which means that you're actually connecting your camera directly to your computer. And instead of shooting images to a memory card, you're actually shooting to the hard drive of your computer itself. This has a couple of different awesome features if you've never used tethering before, or if you are a portrait photographer, or if you're doing food photography. It really helps a lot to be able to actually see the image that you're trying to take on a full-size screen instead of looking at it in a tiny little window on the back of your camera. So we'll go ahead and we'll move to the lens tool. Capture One has a lot of built-in features, both for colorization, which we'll get to in just a moment, but also on a lens correction piece as well. We support actually over 600 cameras today, and in the case of the Sony guys, we take care of basically all of the most recent Sony cameras. I've been using since I had an A6000 back in the day and then moved to an A7R2, and now I'm on the A7R4, and we're still got support all the way through in this case. Because we partnered with Sony originally to develop a Sony-only version of the program, we've worked very closely with them to make sure that the lens range for the E-mount are all covered here. I'm not sure if you can see my pop-out window. I know that Zoom's a little bit funny sometimes, but I'm kind of scrolling through the various lens profiles that we've got here. But you can also see that by default, it did pick up that Scott was using the 28-70 lens here. We've got the ability to correct for purple fringing, for distortions that occur, and we've got the ability to crop images from this particular page here as well. In this case, I don't see too many lens things that we'll need to work with, but I'll go ahead and we'll move to the next area here, which is going to be mostly our color section. I'm going to actually flip this around a little bit. I normally would use color after the fact, so we're going to come back to that. The first thing I see with this image here is that we've got a nice sunrise or sunset coming into the image, but the rest of it does appear to be quite dark. So we've got the ability, of course, like any raw processing suite, to make adjustments independently to exposure, contrast, brightness. But as you start working through that, you'll notice very quickly that if I get exposure in the rocks there in the foreground, I'm losing that sun in the background. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to actually come to my high dynamic range tool, and I'm going to specifically bring up some of the shadows in that image, which of course is working with just that shadows layer, just the darkest colors in this image. And I'm going to do the same with the blacks to kind of pull that up and get some detail out as well. And I want to bring back, there we go, bring out those highlights just a little bit so that we can get a little bit more of that warmth coming in. And I think now we're getting out about where we would like to be. Now, of course, since I did do a little bit of magic to this image here, I kind of want to take and I want to warm things up just a little bit to kind of, again, make that image pop for me. And I think that gets a little bit better of an image as we're kind of working along. I'll now come back to the colors section here that we were working on before. And I think that I kind of like where we're at here. So I won't do too many changes there. What I will do that I did notice here in our image is there's a couple of things that I want to get rid of. Of course, it looks like we've got a bit of a plane that came through here. So I'm going to actually take one of the new features that's on our most latest version of Capture One, and I'm going to do a little healing on that image. And once I've done that, of course, our plane goes away. I also notice this dust spot up in the upper corner here as well. And we'll do a little healing there as well. Perfect. So, of course, those were little bitty pieces that that we were able to change. And as we kind of go through things, I'll see if I can find some more examples of something that's a little bit harder to work with as we kind of go along. We'll move here to our navigator tool. So this is going to be where we're talking about sharpening and noise reduction. In this case, I actually, since I just was looking at these photos today, I didn't see too much that we needed to make any changes to, but we'll still kind of go and I'll take a look and see if I can make things a little bit better as well. Let's see. I think we need just a little bit more clarity in the image. Now, of course, all of these aren't going to look as best as they can because we are doing everything sort of streaming over the internet piece by piece. So that's definitely something to consider. But one of the things that I have found with Capture One as a raw processing software and as a Sony user myself, things just seem to look much better out of the camera putting into Capture One. So you're actually getting the best image that you can sort of out of everything here. So let me go ahead then, just as a little bit of an example, I'm going to also pull up our one of our other new tools, our before and after tool. So if you joined a little bit late, you can actually see here's the file as we brought it into Capture One. And then with just a few adjustments, we're able to kind of bring things out to be a much sort of more pleasant image and bring a lot more of the details back into the foreground here. We can kind of look at the same piece here. I'm going to turn off my before and after. And of course, you know, as we're going along, if somebody has any questions, feel free to pop that information into the chat so that Donovan can pass it along to me. Or of course, if you want to unmute and say anything, feel free to do that as well. and that way we can kind of go through. I guess now that I've sort of shown the basic piece, what questions do people have about Capture One that I might be able to answer? What can I kind of guide this session to be?
Well, I had a question for this is Donovan, and I know I've been using the software for a bit, but I've been using the healing tool. One of the things I noticed is that if I'm working in the layers with the healing, and if I add another layer on top of that, it just still takes that healing tool into consideration. And so I don't have to go back and say, reclone that healing tool into the other extra layers and stuff like that. It seems to know about that, about the healing process, you know, that healing layer that it creates when you do those healing tools. Is that right, or am I not catching that with the stuff I've been doing?
So with the new healing tool that was released on our most latest version in the middle of June, it actually was completely revamped for the system. We used to have an older spot healing tool, which was good for sort of taking out dust and things of that nature, but it had a bit of a hard time when it came to really truly taking a piece and making adjustments on it. So for example, let me come in here and let's see if I can just take out this orange piece right there and see what we can make happen. Yep, and it actually looks like that did a pretty good job at removing that and making that happen there. So so definitely, you know, using the healing tool, it creates its own layer that actually takes and puts pieces together and decides what best to take advantage of within the photo and work in a bit of a smarter way.
Is it true? And then I was watching one of the demos. Is it true you could do the you can change the opacity of just that layer for the healing layer as well too, just in case you want to do something really funky?
Most definitely, you should be able to. Let's see here. There we go. Change our opacity of just that one layer. If you did bring some things in and out there. Let's get real fun here. Let's see if I can take out this power pole back here and see what we can do to sort of bring it out of play. And I think that to me was actually kind of impressive. It handled that pretty well, and I'm not showing anything that looks too egregious at a normal there. So this is going to be one of those images where let's see if we can do some color editing and see what I can do to bring out. I am going to come in here, and actually it would help if I get off my healing layer and go back to my background layer. The interesting and cool part about Capture One, of course, when it comes to this, is that everything I'm doing is non-destructive. So, you know, looking again at the before and after tool, everything that I've done is not actually being applied to the image until I hit the final export button to get it out of the system. So similarly to other sort of pixel editing based programs, I've got the ability to make some changes and can go a little bit heavy-handed with it if I feel that I need to. And then I can always back that off in the end as well.
Hey, Blake, I'm sorry to interrupt. Somebody had a question about going through some of the import stages. But I think if you can, after you do this color bit, is maybe back up and talk a little bit about the importing too.
Sure, most certainly. So yeah, I'll come in here and I'll make some adjustments. Of course, I'm kind of going a little bit overboard, but I really do like that sky, and I really like what it brings to the image here. So, you know, one of the big things that I'm kind of wanting to show today is just how easy and effective I can take and make changes within the software to put things together. So, you know, really, if we're looking at everything now, again, I'll go to that before and after, and you can definitely see how dramatically we're able to bring out all of the detail and all of the resolution in this file, and being able to really take advantage of some of the things that make the Sony system's great. So let's backtrack. What questions did we have about our import feature? Let's see here. Can we go through the steps of getting the images imported? Okay, so the import process can work in one of a couple of different ways. The easiest of which is if you've got Capture One up and running, you can hit the Import Images button in the upper right hand here. Did that pop up an Import Images window by chance? Can anybody see that, or do I need to adjust?
I can see it on my end.
Okay, perfect. So when you select import, you get this window that pops up here as the import images option. The top piece is your source. So that's asking where do you want to import it from. In my case, I've got a file on my desktop where I've drugged these photos together. But by default, if you plug in an SD card, that SD card would show up here, and it would allow you to import the images in. So once you decide where you want it from, you then decide where you want to import it to. Now, at the beginning of our talk today, I kind of talked briefly on the idea of sessions versus catalogs. This import to option actually changes slightly depending on which of those versions that you're using. In this case, since we're using a session, the session folder or the session itself creates a folder where those images need to be. So I'm not messing with anything there. Backup to, you've got the ability upon import to backup files as well. I don't tend to use that here. I've got some other ways to make that happen. You've got the ability to name your files particularly if you want to use it in a very certain way. We have a very robust token system that allows you to add in all sorts of metadata at the time of import. This, of course, again, I don't really typically use in my workflow, but for somebody who is sort of putting everything into a big catalog and working from that catalog, those import tokens really help to kind of nail down where a file came from, where it was taken, that sort of information. You've got the ability to put in your metadata, so your name is the copyright holder and any descriptions you would like to choose. And you've got the ability to apply adjustments at the time of import, which is a little bit more of an advanced setting. But if you're someone like me, a lot of the photos when I'm out taking, I tend to underexpose by about a stop or a stop and a half. And I actually can create a series of styles, which we'll get into momentarily, that will give you some options on how to apply those while you are importing to save you some time. So did that answer the question we had about import and getting things together?
I don't know. Kathy is the one who asked the question, so I'll wait till we hear back from her. She left it in the chat window.
Okay. Yep, I see that there. So, so of course, Kathy, if you have any other questions, feel free to pop in. I'm more than happy to go from there. Awesome. We got a yes. We're good to go from there. So I'm going to go ahead now, and we'll kind of continue working through some of the images here. Are there any other big things that that I'm kind of glossing over too quickly that we want to ask, or are we still kind of just enjoying looking at all these wonderful images from Mr. Niedermeyer here as we're working through? One thing I haven't shown yet is going to be some of our style options. And I will do what I can to stop moving the cursor. And unfortunately, I'm not working with my my tablet today, so it's a little bit harder to get to certain places as we're working along. But I'll do my best. I'm going to apply some styles to this image here. Styles are a bit of a starting point for certain images that you can utilize sort of recipes to make your images look kind of the way that you would like them to. We've worked with several photographers across the industry to create specialized style packs, and our color scientists as well have a few that are sort of great to bring into play. So let's see some of the Pacific styles here. I'm going to actually zoom out on this image so that I can look at it as a whole. And I kind of like that Venice Beach style. I like the additional contrast that kind of comes into it. It's a little bit chunky, but we'll work with that to bring things along. Again, I want to come in here and I want to make some adjustments. I want to brighten up so that we can really make the puffin pop there. But of course, in doing so, we are going to lose some of the highlights in the sky. So I'm going to see if I can bring back some of those. Looks like it's a little bit, yeah, it's a little bit better. Looks like we didn't get too much there in the sky. Of course, I noticed another dust spot that we're going to take care of there. So again, you can see that Capture One really does a great job at sort of picking out which options are available and what we can do to sort of fix everything up here. Unfortunately, there's not really a whole much more that I would really do to some of these images here. So we're really working on some great stuff across the board there. I think that also as well brings us up to a really good before and after to really change the way that image looks for the final piece here. So let's go and let's try something a little bit different. So of course, we've got some great photos from Scott here. I'm going to bring up some of the photos that I have taken over my travels. I tend to, when I am out and about, a lot of my work are bikes and graffiti. So we're gonna change, and we're gonna go from nice puffins to something a little bit more inside of the city here. And did I hear someone pop up?
Yeah, there's a couple questions in the chat thing. Bruce was asking if he's not familiar with Capture One. Can you share what you think makes Capture One better, or what's different than using Lightroom and Photoshop?
Gotcha. I could certainly answer some of those questions here. So Capture One itself is a standalone raw processing software. And what I feel that makes Capture One better than using some of the other options that are available are in sort of twofold. One, the way that we handle color. In a longer presentation, I would certainly look at color a whole lot more. But color is one of the big things that we strive to make the best out of. Every time a new camera is launched, other processing groups kind of just will interpret and be able to take the images and import them. We actually have a team of color scientists that profile each camera individually and take thousands of images to make sure that what you see in this case is going to adequately reflect the image that you have at the end. So within that color science as well, it makes it extremely easy for us to apply various color styles and various color pieces to images as well to make those look as natural or in some cases unnatural as you would like. I also find that raw images that I import into Capture One from my own usage tend to have a lot more latitude when it comes to the adjustments that you can make. Especially in the Sony world, you've got the ability to take images that are underexposed or overexposed, and in a lot of cases bring back that detail that is sort of in play. Now, that being said, there are a couple of differences. Today, Capture One is not really a program that is designed to replace a pixel editing program such as Photoshop. We are making strides to make it so that you don't need to work within additional programs, but we do have a couple of pieces that are built in to allow things to work together. One of those, I'm going to actually scroll back up here to one of the photos that we've worked with already. We'll go back to Mr. Puffin here. Is going to be our edit with option. And our edit with option allows you to take and use Capture One as the first step in a process. And I'll use Affinity Photo in this case because I have migrated away from some of the Adobe programs in my own personal workflow. When you choose Edit With, you get a nice pop-up window that asks here, what type of image are you looking to edit and within what program? In this case, we'll go ahead and I will do a TIFF, an uncompressed, and I'll drop it down to an 8-bit just to kind of keep things a little bit faster here. When I tap the Edit Variants button, Capture One is going to process and prepare that image and actually go ahead and open it up within Affinity Photo in this case, which is my pixel editor of choice. Once that pops up and gets processed, I will share the screen over and we can look at everything there. But all of this to say that this also works in what we call our round trip. So Capture One is designed to import your file, make your basic color adjustments. If you needed to do any cloning, stacking, or things of that nature, you can do that in another program. And then once you save your image, it can come back to Capture One for printing and final archiving. So that's sort of some of the pieces that we all work together. I can say that, as I mentioned a little bit ago, we are in the process of adding more and more tools to Capture One that will allow for some of these better edits to take place. But of course, you know, for now, we've got a pretty formidable piece. And I've got that up here, so I'm going to see if I can share now my screen here. So now I should be in Affinity Photo. Everybody should see Mr. Puffin once again there. So I'm going to do something that I typically normally wouldn't do, but we'll see if I can make it just to kind of use the point here. And you'll have to forgive me because I wasn't prepared to make any changes here, so I'm going to need to scroll and size down my window. I'm going to come in here and take this green pen, and I'm going to just make a smiley face on Mr. Puffin. Again, I wouldn't normally do that, but for the sake of what I'm showing, it should be okay. And I will take and I will save that image. And once I have saved it, I will quit Affinity Photo. And when I pop back over to Capture One, I should have a copy of that image as a TIFF file. And as you can see, that's sort of part of that round trip file. So as I edited the file in another program, when I saved it, Capture One recognized that save and brings that image back in this case. I did get a question here as well from Bruce about explaining how to create a multi-layer image. That's going to be something that today is more built within a pixel editing program. I can take within our layers and I can adjust specific colors, but in terms of compositing and putting multiple pieces into the same image, that's going to be a little bit of a different process. So if you got a follow-up question from that, Bruce, certainly let us know, and I can certainly see what we can do. I can say that there are various plugins that we have for Capture One that do allow for example focus stacking, so that you can actually take multiple images and then put them together that way. So for example, if you were doing tabletop photography or interior photography and needed to take multiple images, unfortunately I don't have anything set up today to provide that kind of demo, but we do have some pieces from there.
Hey, Blake.
Yes.
Just to follow up with Bruce there with the layers and stuff. As I mentioned before, I've been using the software pretty much as a workflow in the store. And one of the things that I found that's really helpful is the layer environment in there. And the fact that you can actually create multiple color layers, you know, and I'm sure Blake will go over some of the color stuff. It's been really helpful, especially with some of the files that I've been having to deal with. And it's been helpful with some of the low light images, because some of you have seen some of my Milky Way and astrophotography stuff, which we're going to talk about later on this month, you know, in the next couple of weeks here. But if you guys are interested in that, I'd be more than glad to answer those questions for you too, as well after the thing here at the store or whatever. Yeah, but it's a great way to help you, I guess, itemize and move around some of the different elements in the picture. Not move around, but to affect change within the picture itself in a much more effective way than I think Lightroom or Photoshop ever did. That's my own personal opinion. Yes, I like it a lot.
Hey, that's what we like to hear. So looks like we've got probably right around 15 minutes or so left. So I'll see what I can do to work in some of that color profiling and see what we can do to really affect some change here in this image. And see what we can make happen here. And of course, as I'm kind of working around and looking at everything, again, if anybody has any specific questions that I can answer, feel free to pop those in. And also, if you have a raw file available that you wanted me to take a look at and sort of see what we can do, there may be a way that we can quickly handle those as well as we kind of go along. So if I remember right in this particular image, yep, there's not really too much there in that sky. It was a pretty gray day across the board. So let me see what I can maybe do to bring in some additional pieces and work with some additional layers and some color tools here. So I'm going to really take and okay. So Rod asked a question: how do you move the thumbnails to the bottom of the screen so you have a bigger view of the photo you're working on? So Rod, that's going to be a couple of different ways that you can do that. Of course, there is no one real way that anything happens here in Capture One, but excuse me there. I'm actually come up to my workspace tool here, which is going to be Window, and I am going to, for the sake of this one here, let's change it to the migration workspace, which is designed to have those files at the bottom. Now, I do have to admit that I am using just a 13-inch MacBook today, so a lot of my screen real estate is kind of taken up with Zoom and everything else, so it's a little bit harder to kind of demo, but I've got the ability to still make that choice and make those larger images happen here. All right, so we're working with everything today. I brought that exposure way down. I don't know if I can really capture and bring back too much of that cloud image, but I'm going to certainly try. I'm going to create a new adjustment layer here and see if I can really isolate some of those colors and see if I can bring them back. I can't guarantee that I will because I wasn't really planning on it with this particular image, but we can see what we can make happen. Nope, I don't think that's going to work for this particular image here today for that particular demo. So we'll bring back and come back in together here. Sorry about that. My throat's getting a little bit dry from talking here, so I got a little bit of a little cough coming through. Okay, so let's since we can't really bring in too much of that sky, let's see if I can make something happen here with some of these little yellow flowers. So I keep talking about color and how important the color process here is in Capture One. Within that color process, I've got the ability to utilize some of my advanced color tools here. And let's see if I can shift and isolate how these flowers look. So let's break them and make them a little bit more on the orange side, just to kind of show how things are going. So using the color tools that I've got here, I've got the ability to very much address and adjust particular images and particular pieces of color within a layer. And we'll back out here. And so you can see that, you know, before where those were very much bright, little yellow flowers. That's the tool I'm looking for here. You know, again, we're able to sort of make those changes pretty well. Now, if I wanted to, I can actually take, and since those are on a mask, I can come in And I want to adjust just where things are going. Excuse my fumbling here because I'm not in the exact workflow setup that I've got, so things are in a little bit of a different place than what they normally would be. But let's go ahead and I'm going to put on a mask. Let's see if I can take and bring out and get rid of some of the artifacting that kind of came in here when we changed those colors. Oh, that's way too much. Let me adjust. Aha, because I see that's happening here. And of course, as I'm doing that, if any questions come through, please let me know. There we go. So I can adjust that saturation on this piece of log over here where some of those colors kind of bled off. All right, so we'll kind of leave everything to here. Of course, as we're kind of working through as well, one of the other pieces I like about Capture One, when you are using it in sort of a cataloging type function, is you have the ability to very quickly load and render some images here. What is very cool is that these are full resolution images at, I think in this case it was the A7R2, so it was 42 megapixels here. And I can pretty quickly move through. Let me find one that's a little bit in better focus here. I can very quickly move through the image and see and find sort of my depth of field, find that line. And as I kind of move through the image very quickly, I'm not sure if it can be seen so much on the Zoom screen, but it actually has a very wonderful refresh rate so that I'm very quickly able to move through even these very large images and have it render sort of on the fly as we go. And Rod, yes, I assume you can apply one images setting to a group of images. What button would you use for that? So there's, of course, as I mentioned, there's multiple ways that you can make that happen. But I'm going to go ahead and we'll use this image as an example. And let me see if I can clean up my screen and move that chat around here just a little bit. And I'm going to actually go back to our default workspace just so that I know where I can find everything a little bit easier. So the first thing that you can do is if you want to adjust just one particular setting throughout a series of images, you can actually use the copy paste button. That's a little double-sided arrow in any of the tools. So that allows you to just select that particular tool to move those adjustments. So in this case, if we wanted to go and work with just the shadows, I can actually click there and say copy just the shadows and go to another image, and I can come down and apply just the previous shadow adjustments as well. Looks like it didn't make too much of a difference there. The other piece that you can is in a item here, you can right click or control click. And where is it? I thought that I had a way to make that change as well. Oh, looks like I've got it up here in this particular workspace. So you've got the ability to copy and paste from up here. With the A tool, you can copy adjustments and apply. So if you wanted to copy a full image, I'll take and I can copy. And then we'll say apply to this image here. And I've actually never seen that, that error before. So it looks like it's given me some issues here today, but yes, it is possible to copy from one to another. I'd have to see what's particularly going on with that one here.
Yeah, I've been finding because there's, I know you can do in the menu, go to copy adjustment layer, not adjustment, you can copy the variant and then multiple select bunch of images and say, paste it there. But I did a mistake one time where I accidentally, I didn't realize I had selected all the pictures. And when I was making adjustments, because if you're doing that, like if you hit like auto adjust, it's going to auto adjust all the pictures. And if you're making other adjustments to it, if you got everything selected, even though you might only see the one, but if you got everything selected, it starts making adjustments to everything at the same time. When I was like, how come is it taking so long? I was like, oh, it's because I did that. I found that out. I was doing that. I was trying to change a bunch of slides around for color because a lot of the slides were shot the same way, and I didn't realize I had selected everything. So it was what I call an operator error.
Yep, that does happen, and I'm having a little bit of that myself right now. I can't, for the life of me, see why it will not let me apply some of these differences here. So I'll have to go in and do some researching myself. Looks like we're sitting at about 7 minutes left. What questions do we have? What's come up? What can I answer for everybody today? I think that's the. I did a bit of a job of kind of quickly looking at some images and sort of showing what Capture One is capable of, but I would love to answer any more specific questions if they do exist, and see what we can do to bring things together here.
There was a question from Brian, or more like asking about for a pop-up balloon with the cursors over an icon. Zoom doesn't really allow for that, and I don't know. And as far as I know, with Mac, you can't do that with your cursor, if I'm not mistaken. So so yeah, I know it's a little bit hard to see the cursor sometimes on there, but we'll see what we can do for the next time. And but I thank you for bringing that to my attention, Brian. See if there's a different solution for
that. Well, let's do this here, since there's not really too many other questions. Let's talk about export real quick. Actually, oh, here we go. And yes, Rod. So to answer your question here, you do have the ability to copy and paste those settings across multiple images. I actually just needed to re-add that tool to my toolbar up at the top, which is one of the cool pieces of, again, about Capture One, is how configurable it is. So I had to add that tool, but now I have the ability to grab and copy pieces from one image and output them to another. Bruce asks, is there a trial for Capture One? Yes, sir. Capture1.com. We do have a free 30-day trial, and you can actually download that trial and get started today. Whenever you're ready, please reach out to the team at Johnson PhotoImaging, Donovan, and the rest of the guys, and say that you would like to take advantage of getting everything set up with Capture One. For the next I would say for the next 60 days or so, we actually are having a special as well. It was kind of mentioned. I don't know if we mentioned it while we were recording yet, but Capture One for Sony is 25% off for the next I think roughly month and a half or so. Normally it is $129 before any applicable taxes and fees, but after that 25% discount, it actually brings it down to $96.75. So a little bit under $100 for a very, very, very powerful piece of software. So as I was sort of mentioning before, we're going to go and I'm going to actually talk about the export process finally as well. Because, of course, images are great. Having them on your computer is great. But the piece that's missing is getting those out into the world. Capture One uses what we call our recipe-based systems to actually take and share the images to the rest of the world. By default, we have a couple of different recipes that are put together, but along with everything in Capture One, you've got the ability to create your own and edit the recipes as you see fit. So what I've gone ahead and done is I'm going to create a new recipe today. I'm going to share this just as a quick proof, just so that I can get it out the door and see what people would like to sort of see with it as I'm delivering it to clients here. I'm going to change my resolution because this is only going to go on the web. Change that down to 72 pixels per inch, so not quite the full res printing that we would like with. And I want to make sure that since I'm on a Mac, that my clients are going to be able to open that in preview. I've got the ability to change where everything goes out and what type of adjustments are applied to it. And today I'm going to keep things kind of simple. And I'm going to go to my output location, and I'm going to say I want this in my output folder. This is a folder that's generated and created at the time of setting up a session like we were doing today. So I'm going to actually go ahead and change that to my desktop just to make it a little bit easier for me to find in this case. Then I've got the ability for naming and how I want to name this image. Right now, by default, it's naming it with the image name and the current date. But much like during the import process, I've got the ability to take and tag it with all sorts of descriptions and these tokens to put things together. So with this here, just for the sake of putting things together today, I want to, I think, apply the focal length to the name just to really makes things change. So you'll see here that the focal length gets appended to the beginning of that name. Of course, I probably wouldn't do this as we were going along, but it makes for an interesting demo as we're kind of making things happen here. And then finally, when we are good to go, I can go ahead and I'm going to tap the process button, and that should work pretty quickly to get it out of Capture One. Of course, you can do this as well with multiple images and bring them all out at the same time, but I'm going to go ahead and just do it for the one. And I'm going to switch the screen share here. Once I told it to spit out, of course, the preview here on my Mac opened it right up, and I'm able to then go ahead and send that file out and either send it off to print something very small or send it over to Instagram or my website and put things out. So that should give you a little bit of the process of working with files today. I know that this was extremely quick and of course is not an end-all be-all piece, but is more designed to kind of give a bit of a taste of some of the images and some of the possibilities that we've got here with Capture One today. So with that, I think we're just right at our time. Are there any other questions that we've got coming up that I can answer before we leave today? Looks like Rod had another question. Is there a starting point for sharpening when you export from RAW to JPEG? Rod, can I have you give me a little bit more information on what you're asking on that question here? Of course, each image is going to be a little bit different, at least during my processing piece, just because if I'm sharpening for web or for print, that's going to change how sort of where that point becomes. And of course, each image kind of works a little bit differently as well. So there's not like a default amount of sharpening that's applied. Each is kind of working a little bit differently there.
All right. Any other questions out there?
One other thing that I'm going to actually paste in our chat here is a link to what's called our 30-day challenge. Back during the sort of beginning of everybody staying at home, we launched actually and created the 30-day challenge for users just as yourselves that are sort of starting off from scratch. Capture1.com /en/get-inspired /30/30-day-challenge. We can, it's a bit of a mouthful one for the replay. We'll make sure that we get that posted up so that you can look at it from there. Our 30-day challenge is 30 bite-sized chunks of learning that are designed to take you from having never touched Capture One before all the way through a mastery and being able to very quickly and easily work with your items. I highly suggest take advantage of the 30-day free trial and the 30-day challenge, and then learn very easily what your software is capable of and how to take your images to those next levels.
Yeah. One of the things, too, the reason why I got excited about Capture One, mainly because of, again, with some of the files that I work with, is that several of the photographers I follow, like Joe Eidelman and Peter Baumgarten, they use Capture One software for their own benefit. And that's one of their first pieces of software that they use as part of their workflow in their editing. So, they do also work with the Photoshop and Lightroom and everything else. So it's not just like that. Obviously they all have their own little system and how they do everything. But whenever I've talked with Peter and stuff like that, or Joe, that's what they start off. They start off with Capture One because of the color. and then they could pop it into Photoshop or any other pixel editor, like Luminar 4 or whatever software catches your fancy. Or you can just say, do all the stuff in Capture One, and you can export it into Lightroom if you still want to do all that. It's a pretty straightforward software, and for color enhancements, it works out really well. It's not going to be for everybody, but for the most part, if you like color, and color is your main driving point, it's one of the things that I found very useful with it. All right, cool. All right, well, thank you, Sue. We appreciate that. Any other questions for Blake before I let him go? No. All right. Well, yes.
I was just thanks for having me, and then thanks for joining me today. And of course, yeah, as mentioned, if there are any specific questions that come up, feel free to send them along, and I'd be more than happy to get them answered, and we can go from there.
All right. Well, Blake, thank you so much for taking the time of doing this. I look forward to seeing you next week and the week after that. One of these days, we'll get you back in the store where we can where you can sit down and you can go over stuff with people directly with them. So that will be the fun time.
As soon as it's safe to do so, consider me there.
Not a problem. Well, thank you guys for stopping in, and I will make sure that I'll pass on your love to Michael. I'm assuming that's what you guys would like to do. So, so I'll make sure that gets on to him. Thank you guys very much for stopping by. And you guys have a really great night. Be safe. Be well. I will be posting this up on YouTube as soon as we get done processing the video. As I said, it's right now on Facebook right now. It's streaming live. It'll be up there for wherever on Facebook is on for Johnson Photo. I did post the link in the chat, so if you scroll up to the chat, you can get the link from there. I will, again, once everything's ready, finalized, I will then send out another e-blast to all the Sony users. All right, guys. Well, thank you all very much. Have a great, again, be safe and be well. Thanks, Rob.